Hey Cybernauts, I'm Ritika Pandey and I welcome you all to the second episode of Enlightening Talk series by Cyversity with a Joyful Heart. Cyversity is a small, volunteer driven community that is created by the students like you and me for the people who are interested to read, learn, explore, and contribute to the field of cybersecurity. We started the Enlightening Talk series with a goal to spread awareness about cybersecurity among the common public and to create the strongest community with the finest cybernauts. The success of our previous episode encouraged us, and so we are here with another episode. We are very excited for today's episode. Today's episode will be about the trending vulnerabilities with insights to OWASP 10. OWASP 10 is the list of top 10 most critical web application security risks. So we'll be doing a lot of discussions about these top 10 vulnerabilities, and also there will be a lot of questioning and answering by our guest speaker, Mr. Harsh Bothra. So I'd like to invite our founder, Yash Gorasya, to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Harsh Bothra.
I guess you're on mute, Yash.
Good evening, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you for accepting our invitation on such a short notice. Sir is currently a security consultant at Redent Labs, core pentester at Cobalt.io, and member at Cynic Red Team. Sir has authored multiple books about hacking. To name few are Be a Hacker with Ethics and Mastering the Art of Information Gathering and Scanning. Sir has delivered talks at multiple platforms such as Cyber Jungle by DEFCON Red Team Village, Texas Cyber Summit, Bug Bounty Village, and many more. Sir has been ranked as top 150 researcher of all time by Bug Crowd. He has completed certifications such as CH version 10, EWPTX version 2, and ECPPT version 2. It is indeed pleasure to have such an experienced speaker at Enlightening Talk Series Episode 2, an initiative by Cyversity. Now, I would like to hand over to Sir for continuing this session. Over to you, Sir.
Thank you, Yash and team, for a very nice introduction. So, hi everyone, as you all know me, that we have previously talked a lot of time before. A lot of you might have already heard my boring talks, but today we'll be again coming up with something new. And let me just quickly share my screen. Just a second. Yep, I guess you all are now able to see my screen. So today we are going to more of talk about trending vulnerabilities with insights to OWASP top 10. First of all, thank you Cyversity team for coming up with the topic, because I was not sure what to present and what not to talk about, because I really didn't want to talk about reconnaissance each and every time or some common things. So this was actually a interesting topic when Smart reached out to me regarding this, that trending vulnerabilities with insights to OWASP top 10. So I thought to put more lights and insights about it and just create a simple PPT. Who am I? This doesn't matter at all, because already the team has introduced me. And apart from that, I am a creator of Project Beam, if you have used it somewhere, for reconnaissance. And I am currently going to Learn 365. I am an advocate of continuous learning, and I encourage people to learn something daily so that you can speed up your learning process. You can be always aware of what's going on in the market, right? So continuous learning really helps you a lot. And right now I'm following Learn 365. I am somewhere on my day 145 or 146 today. So yeah. Now, the agenda for today's talk would be more about introduction to application security, just for the folks who are new to application security or who are just assuming that the web application is everything around cyber security or something like that. So I just want to break that barrier, and first of all, like to introduce you all to the like basics of application security. What are the various components? When I say application security, what we exactly do, what are the career goals and requirements and everything like that. Then we'll be looking at the OWASP top 10. The current release is of 2017. I am not using the new draft which came recently. I am using the one which is currently published, which is of 2017. And then some of the trending vulnerabilities in comparison with the OWASP top 10. This is something that we are going to do and discuss about, and how to hunt for those vulnerabilities in my way. I'll be showing you my notes and whatever I can in the given time frame, so that you can also have some insights and some of the tips and tricks at the end to see if you can find something useful and give your career a head start. More of, I would really appreciate if we keep the session more of engaging, and if you ask a lot of questions, it would really make me learn something new from your questions as well. Maybe I might not be able to answer it right away, but someday I'll answer it for sure. So now let's, without wasting time, jump in directly to our first agenda topic, which is introduction to application security. Now, whenever I say application security, is not just always about web application. It can be any application, the application that you might be using on Android phone, on your iOS device, or like iPhone, or anything which you are using on your Windows, Mac, or Linux environment, right? So these all things come into application security. Whenever we talk about any application which is built, let's say you are using an IoT device and a smart home device, right? You are using Alexa to control your home light. So Alexa's software is also an application, and this also comes under the application security somewhere, right? So this application security is a kind of combination of various sub-components, and these components are web application, mobile application, APIs, and thick clients, right? So this is a simple tech classification, and like web is something that you all are using YouTube right now through your web browsers. So that's a simple web application, right? A lot of you might be using your mobile applications, like using YouTube through your Android phone or your iPhone. So that is your basically mobile application for YouTube. And then there are APIs. So in the backend, the YouTube is streaming my video to you and your question to me. So back and forth, a lot of services are going around in the backend. All these things are handled by the APIs, right? So this is where the APIs come into picture, and this is where the third component API is existing. Now, let's say you are using Spotify to hear songs on your mobile or your web application or somewhere, but Spotify also gives you the desktop client, which you can install on your Windows or your Mac or your Linux. I'm not sure about Linux, but for Windows and Mac, you can do it, right? So anything like your Chrome browser, right, or your Slack, your WhatsApp, anything that you can install on your PC or your Mac or your Linux system, that's your thick client, right? So more of these things are same. So a single application, let's say Google Drive, right? So Google Drive has web interface, it has its own desktop application, it has its mobile application. So at the end, everything, like all of these companies these days are using different kind of clients, right? So whenever I say cybersecurity or offensive security, I talk about application security, and when I refer to application security, I refer to all those things like web application, mobile application, APIs, and thick clients, right? So just like the WASP has a list for web application, WASP also has a list for APIs and mobile application. I'm not sure that how many of you are aware of it, but if you go and search about WASP mobile top 10 or WASP API top 10, you will find out that there are checklist, or there are top 10 list for mobile and APIs as well. Also, I remember vaguely that WASP also has a list for Docker. So right now, this is out of scope of our current talk, but if you want to go and explore it as well, you can do it. Now, I am not sure that how much content is available on the internet around thick client, because a lot of people who into bug bounty are not used to of doing thick clients, and most of the resources which are available for learning are because of the bug bounty hunters somewhere, because a lot of blog posts and write-ups and a lot of kind of bypasses which they come up with too often. So yeah, you will find a lot of resources around web application, mobile application, and APIs, and this is what we are going to talk about. For today's talk, I'll be focusing mainly upon web application. Now, if you have any doubts regarding the application security, what it is and what the career scope are, so let me just quickly give you a brief idea. Okay, so when I say I want a job in cybersecurity, there are two domains. One is defensive cybersecurity, one is offensive cybersecurity. Now, offensive is not something which you are doing wrong. It's just the more of like you are simulating a real life attacker scenario. You are simulating a real life threat scenario for the target client. Okay. Now, in the offensive security, there are multiple domains like penetration testing, offensive application security, bug bounty hunting, your red teaming, your source code analysis, and different kind of activities. Now, when I say I work in offensive application security, my main goal or my major role is to test web application, mobile application, API, thick client, or any sort of application it can be, right? So my major area of expertise obviously lies around the network and application security, And if you talk about the more of the career goals, so when you go and apply for a job in the network and application security, more than your experience, your knowledge matters a lot, right? When you go and talk about the source code review or job which revolves around static analysis of the various codes, then your experience matters, like how much experience you have, because reading the source code is not that easy as testing in the web application. Okay, so whenever I say and talk about application security, this is more of like your experience, your bug bounty career, everything that really matters, and this really helps you to grow more forward. Now, so these are the general OWASP top 10 classification. So if you have, like, guys, have any question regarding the discussion that we have had so far, please feel free to jump in and ask it right away. I'll try to keep it, keep taking the question in between. So, okay, assuming that we are all good. So we have, like, OWASP top 10 classification, which is a simply like 10 vulnerabilities as the name suggests. So these are the like top 10 categories which are divided. So when I say injection, it doesn't only mean that only SQL injection or only kind of no SQL injection, LTAP injection. It can be any kind of input injection vulnerability. It can be any kind of injection vulnerability that may cause interaction with the server. Which may allow me to basically steal some data, or which may basically help me to perform any kind of attack, right? It can be any kind of injection. I can say that I am performing a XML injection, I am performing a LDAP injection, I am performing NoSQL injection, I am performing JavaScript injection, right? So all these kind of injections are covered into this first category, which is called injection. It's not again limited to just SQL injection or command injection or specific things. Now, the second one is the broken authentication. And when I say broken authentication, it doesn't always mean that you are just coming and bypassing the authentication of your target. That's not true case. Okay, there are certain cases where you might not be able to bypass the authentication in direct way. So let's say an application is having an admin page. Throughout all the application, you cannot access any component without login, but you navigate it to a specific endpoint /admin/123 or /admin/edit, and now you are able to access that particular authentication endpoint, right? So now that also comes under a broken authentication. It simply means that the authentication mechanism that we have implemented is not up to the mark. It also involves the vulnerability in your forget password page, in your registration page, in your login page. Anything which talks about authentication or authenticated actions comes under a broken authentication. Okay, so it's not always just about going and testing that, hey, how can I bypass the authentication? It can be that, hey, what I can actually do at the authentication. This is what the broken authentication is about. Okay, now I guess we have a question. It might not be relevant here, but I'm supply chain attacks and their rewards on BC and H1. So this thing we can basically go and take it at the end of the talk, because this is something would be more of irrelevant at this point of time. So, but give you insight, supply chain attacks are again result of small vulnerabilities only. So let's say you are having a server, let's say server X, which is used by million of customers or million of people worldwide. Now, a researcher found a zero-day vulnerability on that particular X server, which can allow me to gain a complete access of that server. Okay, I can just go and I can just type my payload or type my whatever the script is, and I will have a complete access to it. Now, what I can do is I can use that vulnerable server across the globe, and I can start putting my payload on all these servers and start compromising them. Once I compromise them, I can start putting more of like what we say, that pivoting thing, and to move laterally into the servers, right? Once you have a good hold of those servers, now you can use those servers to attack further. So supply chain attacks are nothing but you are just using kind of one component which is common, and using that one vulnerable component, you are compromising the complete system of the further target organization. So this is more about supply chain attacks. Now, when I say sensitive data exposure as a number 3 vulnerability in OWASP top 10, it always sensitive data can be exposed in any way. It can be into JavaScript, it can be hard coded into any file, it can be on GitHub, it can be found using Google Docs, it can be into server's response, it can be even SPF records, it can be into anywhere, like anywhere where you find information leaked. That is your sensitive data exposure. It can be at any point. So it doesn't always mean that you are just going to the JavaScript files and you just scroll them and you found nothing and it's the end of the story. No, You are going to GitHub, you found nothing. It's not the end of the story. You have to first understand what all services the organization might be using. Okay, let's say the organization is using Trello boards, and the Trello boards are left open publicly, and there are some information about the hiring. Okay, a company is using Trello for hiring the people, and now you are doing what you are trying to do over there is you are trying to look at the various resume of the people and things like that, and this is where the sensitive data is exposed, right? So it can come into any form. It's not always into hard coded files or something like that. You can run directory searchers, you can run tools like dirt search, kite runner, and still find a lot of information. So also, to increase the impact, make sure that how you can use that exposed data to perform some more sensitive actions. Let's say you found a Swagger file and there are a lot of API calls. A lot of people just stop over there. My simple question is, why not just go and try to run those API calls without authentication? Or why not just go and simply use those API calls and try to break the authentication and perform impactful discovery? Or even the client would be happy with you, and you will be happy that you found something new and interesting to blog about, or to talk about, or to at least show off something. Now, XML external entities is something a lot of people fear. Even I used to fear unless I found my first XSE ever. So XSE is something which is not necessary to be found only when you have XML data with you. Okay, so let's suppose your application is using JSON data. Do you think you can find XSE over there as well? I'm not sure what is your answer, but I'll say that yeah, we can still try to find XSE in the JSON data formats. Okay, all you have to do is to just convert the JSON data to XML1. There are extensions like burps content type converter. Once you convert the JSON data into XML, and you just try to put your simple XML payloads and see if the XML parser is supported. If the XML parser is supported and external DTD is enabled, you can still go and try for XSE over there. So these are the scenarios which comes with the experience. It's not always that the guide says that whenever there is an XML data, whenever there is a SOAP API request, you can go and form the various XSE payloads and try to do X, Y, Z things. It's not always that case. Okay, so whenever we talk about XSE, it can be into any form. Okay, it can be a blind XSE, it can be a out of the band XSE. Okay, so just don't stop when you find that there is an indication of vulnerability. Try to exploit it. It's a learning itself when you try to exploit something out of your league right now. Okay, right now what we are talking about is just the basic OWASP top 10. The next few slides will actually give you an eye opener that what we are missing and what a lot of new bug bounty hunters are doing, and then they are complaining that we are not doing good in the bug bounty hunting or something, right? Now the broken access control is a category where let's say the application is having a lot of user roles, or the application is having a user A in one organization, user B in another organization. Simply put, if I can basically access the data out of my access levels, this is a broken access control vulnerability. Now, it is not always necessary to be an IDOR. It is not always necessary to be direct access control. Okay, sometimes it might be only loading in the burps response when you are putting cookies or replacing cookies. Sometimes it will be just without cookies. You have to think of scenarios. Okay, these are the logical issues, and there cannot be a definite number of test cases when it comes to broken access control or any logical issues. In the logical issues, there are indefinite number of test cases, and you literally cannot limit them. Okay, so now when we talk about the security misconfiguration, okay, so the security misconfiguration is more about that any servers, any kind of third-party services, or any kind of implementation that is in your organizations. Let's say I am using an application, I'm using Nginx server, which is an older version, let's say 1.10.2. Okay, now that server is okay, that won't be a relevant example. So let's say that you are using an Nginx server and there's a version 1.10.2, and when you see the browser's response, it shows you server in the server response, in the server header, that Nginx 1.10.2. So I can basically see the server header. This is a security misconfiguration. Okay, now using this version, I can identify for the known vulnerabilities which will come into component with known vulnerability thing. Similarly, security misconfiguration can be like you are using no rate limiting on your login pages or missing brute force protection. You are using no rate limiting on forget password. There's an invite functionality. You are using no rate limiting on that. you are having a Google Map API key, but you are not limiting it or not restricting it properly. These are some scenarios of security misconfiguration. It's simply like there is a product, there is a services, but you are not using it to the best of its security practices. So let's say you are using an OAuth framework, but you are not implementing all the security checks as per the OAuth implementation or SAML implementation, but all you are doing is you are just implementing it without thinking of what can be the security concerns, right? You are using authentication system with the password, but the password policy is not robust. That's your security misconfiguration. So anything which you are implementing, but you are not using the security practices to the best of their level, these ultimately come under the security misconfiguration. Cross-site scripting, we all know, is more about the popping up things. A lot of people start learning accesses straight away when they jump into the bug bounty. And these days, accesses are not easy to find. Sometimes they are easy to find. It totally depends, what we are looking and where we are looking at the things, right? So accesses is not just about popping up the things. It's more about how you can show impact using cross-site scripting. I have previously worked on a couple of projects. I have done things like, where I used cross-site scripting to do previous escalation. I have used cross-site scripting to perform a remote session hijacking and things like that. So show impact to the end. Now, what is the use of a cross-site scripting if you cannot just simply steal the cookies, right? What you will say? So let's say the client is having the cookies with HTTP only flag enabled. You cannot steal cookies in that case. Okay. Now, how you can basically show the impact of cross-site scripting? This is a question. Okay. So let's say it's a stored cross-site scripting from normal user to admin user. I can use it for the key logging purpose. I can use it to redirect the victim user or perform a UI redressing attack inside the application and try to steal the credential from there. Okay, these are some of the impact scenarios that you have to form. You have to think about it, that how I can go from X point to Y point. This is something you have to choose, that how you can do. So there are a lot of resources available on the internet, no doubt, but you have to choose that where you want to go ultimately, right? Now, insecure deserialization is something a lot of people are afraid to talk about. Even sometimes I am afraid of talking about it. So deserialization is not a new term. So basically, to ease the sending of data from one point to another point in the applications, the serialized objects are used. Basically, the your message is divided into chunks of data or objects, and it's more of like easy to transfer. Okay, so now when they are deserialized back on the backend interface, if you are not using the proper libraries or if you are not using the secure libraries, an attacker can inject some maliciously serialized data, which can result into remote code execution, which can result into performing file inclusion or things like that. So this is the insecure deserialization. There are a less number of resources on this, and this is a quite complicated attack vector. So I sometimes don't recommend newbies or beginners to just directly jump into the OWASP top 10 directly, because these are the categories. These are not the bug classes. These are just the high level overview that these kind of category of bugs are, or these kind of classes of bugs are usually found in the applications, web applications. Okay, so when I say web application, it is not just the black box. Okay, it can be white box as well, it can be gray box, it can be black box as well. So usually the bug bounty that you do is more of gray box and black box, not the white box itself. In the white box you have the source code with you. Using component with known vulnerabilities, it's more of like that you are using a third-party service or using an integration which is known vulnerable. Let's say you are using Jira. Okay, so in the Jira there is an older version, and that older version is more of like vulnerable to multiple different CVs, and you can exploit that particular CV. So that is your component with known vulnerability thing. Now, the insufficient logging and monitoring is something which is happening not directly from a remote attacker's perspective, but it's more on the organization side. Let's say an attack is happening on your web application, but you do not have sufficient logging and monitoring capabilities. You don't have a sufficient log keeping or monitoring capabilities with you. So these kind of issues comes under the insufficient logging and monitoring, and these are like not directly our cup of tea, because I don't think so that I ever found the insufficient logging and monitoring in my so far in my pen testing life cycle. So I never found this issue at all. So I'm not sure that what people do and why this is still a part of WASP top 10, but they might have their own research and reason for that. Okay, so if you have any questions so far, you please feel free to drop it out. Okay, so forceful browsing, you have to restrict the directories. You have to restrict that when to show a 401 or 403 error. Okay, it's more about like from the developer's perspective, that how you restrict the web server for an attacker not to be able to enumerate it. Okay, a second thing, you can put it behind the WAF, so that when the detects that there is a lot of activity going on, there's a lot of noise coming from a particular IP, they start to block it. These are the two ways, but bypassing WAF is not impossible, but make sure that you just restrict it, like from the developer side, that you are defining some rule on the web server that these kind of directories or any subdirectory of /home or /root cannot be accessed to the public user, or these kind of things is something that you can do. Okay, so let me move next. Okay, so commonly identified vulnerabilities out of OWASP top 10. So just right before we saw OWASP top 10, and I'm just breaking this down category to some of the commonly found vulnerabilities which I usually identify whenever I go and sit for the pen test, is the sensitive information in JS and the public files. In the JS, you will find a lot of sensitive information, like let's say email address. Okay, you found an email address that relates to a specific company. Now what I usually do is I use that email address on the GitHub and other GitLab and other resources like Docker registries or anywhere. Okay, it can be Trello, it can be anything. Using that email, I try to see if I have any kind of sensitive information for that email. Sometimes it can be API key, sometimes it can be a secret, sometimes it can be a password. And now using those things, I try to further move my attack scenarios. Okay, also the security misconfiguration, I guess I just didn't mention it, but security misconfiguration like missing rate limits, missing this record, missing that record is one of the again commonly found issue, but they are not that much severe, but it can be impactful. So when we say somebody asked, what's the last, that how to go about supply chain attacks, right? So people often ignore having SPF record not implemented. They're like, okay, we are fine. People say that we don't want to pay for bounties for that, that's okay. But think that what if a professional threat attacker comes and use your mail server or use your mail name, okay, let's say harsh@harshbothra.tech, and mailing you all guys that, hey guys, you are invited to my session, I'm giving a free session on this thing, this is a 5-hour workshop and things like that. You might be social engineer at that point of time. And this is how the initial phase of supply chain attacks come into picture, or any kind of large scale attacks come into picture, that you start basically finding out the weak points of an organization. What if your organization never focused on social engineering trainings? Okay, a lot of organizations these days perform social engineering trainings, but what if your organization is not doing that? What if a threat attacker is using your mail servers, or you are not having any kind of protection, and they can do a lot of stuff out of it, right? I guess social engineering is still the game, because if you can hack the creator, you can hack the creation. This is my one of the favorite quote. But yeah, so none of the security vulnerabilities from a pen tester's perspective are low or high or medium or critical. It's just that you have to make sure your client is aware. From bug bounty perspective, obviously there are a lot of things which we don't report, like missing SPF or missing security headers and things like that. Okay. Now, broken access control is something that we already discussed about. These are the IDORs, and broken access control are the most commonly identified vulnerabilities, and they will stay. You cannot automate them that easy. They will stay. Like automation cannot replace the manual efforts to find BAC and authorization check, bypass, and pre-escalations. Okay. Server-side request forgery is still booming. Like a lot of people, not if internal, but they are finding external SSRF, like getting a ping back on your collaborator. But do you think what is the impact of getting an external ping back from the on the collaborator? So just think of a scenario from the compliance perspective. A lot of countries do not allow you to scan specific ports. Okay, and what if I am using your application to scan the ports of, or just ping the ports or ping the application of a XYZ target? Okay, now in their logs you will be held responsible, not me. So basically attacker is using your server to request or to ping somebody else server. Okay, so this is where the SSRF, external SRF comes into picture. And this is where external SSRF are also impactful somewhere. They are obviously not impactful as the internal or AWS SSRF, but they are impactful. Now, let's say you have an HTML injection. This is a very basic technique. Like let's say you have an HTML injection. Okay, usually people do, what they do is, okay, we have an HTML injection, we found H1, test H1, and we just report it. Let's say your website is hosted on AWS, and What if I try instead of the h1 tag, you know, what if I simply try for iframe? Iframe src equals to aws metadata ip, okay, and then latest metadata, and then what if the aws metadata credentials are rendered over there? How many of you have tried this thing ever? Actually, whenever you find html injection, even if you found an html injection on the, you know, what we say, in the email, there are some html injection which executes in the email, right? Email interfaces in your gmail and something like that. How about trying the AWS SRF on the application, which might reflect back into your email? Right? These are the scenarios which actually helps you to, you know, basically, you know, what we say, increase the impact, right? This is how you increase the impact. Similarly, cross-site scripting these days are more about finding the bypass. There will be application in the pen test where you will find simple cross-site scripting, but in bug bounty, it's all about bypass. But still, people find it. Obviously, they do spend a lot of time in finding the bypasses. And let's say you found a Cloudflare bypass, and you know that these 50 websites are protected by Cloudflare. I'll go and spray my payload on all those 50 websites, and now I have 50 access payloads, or sorry, access 50 access vulnerable targets. Okay, so this is how you approach in bug bounty or pen testing, that you have to work smart, not just hard. Okay, so this is obviously a combination of all these things. Business logic abuse is a lot of people, sometimes I'm not sure they consider it or they don't consider it at all. Business logic abuse is more about, let's say an application is having a specific test case. Assume an e-commerce application, okay? So let's say you have an e-commerce application, and in that particular e-commerce application, there is a review functionality where only the person who has purchased the product will be marked as a verified reviewer. Okay, what if without purchasing that product, I can mark myself as a verified reviewer? What will be the impact? I can create false reviews, right? I can increase the rating and decrease the rating of a product, and people will think they are purchased by a verified reviewer, right? What if only one person can review only once? Okay, and how about just bypassing this restriction to post as many as review on a single product using a single account? These are the few things which comes under business logic abuse, that you are understanding the various business workflows, and then you are trying. Another example could be, whenever you make a purchase, the target application gives you 10% in terms of coins. Okay, let's say it's an application, you purchase something for 1000 rupees, you got 100 coins for it. Okay, now let's say you have those particular 100 coins and you cancel the order. Typically the application should also deduct the 100 coins back, but they are not doing it. So every time what you will do is, so every 100 coins are equal to 10 rupee. Now you know the maths, right? You can cancel order as many times as you want, and ultimately you are going to get a lot of money in your account to buy the product for free. So these are the simple business logic abuse which a lot of people find, and this is what you have to think of, how we can basically find such things. Or these are the not limited test cases, these are just some of the test cases. Okay, so yeah, so let me just pick up the questions. So platform, it's totally up to you. Bugcrowd and HackerOne integrated, these are the three public platforms. Yes, VHack is also another platform. So it's totally up to you that which program you are comfortable in. I started with Bugcrowd, so you can also start from it because it gives you Hall of Fame. So sometimes you feel motivated that, yeah, I found something and I got a Hall of Fame for it. And then what are the prerequisites for starting bug bounty? I would say that only mindset. Okay, if you have a correct mindset, and even if you're not from technical background directly, you can still do it. Obviously you need to put more and more efforts, but a good system, at least i5 processor laptop with 8 GB of RAM in terms of hardware, and at least a knowledge of how to, you know, use internet efficiently, how to use internet in a way that it does all the job for you, and more of like a basic understanding of web application, how they work, what are the various networking protocols, how HTTP, SSL, TLS, FTP, and things like that works, and obviously how to use Burp Suite and how to use proxy, how to use developer tools. These are the basic things, and then you are good to go. Like once you know all these basic things, you are good to go. I believe that. So I guess Margit, this will answer your question as well, because more of them like are similar question, but still if it doesn't explain, please feel free to just put the question again. Now, impact of HTML injection. So basically the first one, if it's a normal HTML injection, it's just the, you know, social engineering. You can perform visual spoofing. So let's say in the email, there is a button called sign up. But what if I put a similar kind of button using my HTML injection, but now the victim is redirected to my link instead of your link? Okay, so this is more of the impact of normal HTML injection. But the one scenario that I talked about, try SSRF, AWS Metadata SSRF payload in the HTML injection thing, and then let's see if it actually it pops you up with the AWS meta information in your email. So these are the few things that you can do to show the impact. What are the best ways to automate task in bug bounty according to you? So you cannot, see, don't rely on automation. Automation is not always helpful. Automation is just a part of repetitive processes. Let's say you have a signatures created, you just like nuclei tool, right? They are using various signatures. Okay, so now you know that there are 100 targets, and you want to run the same signature over the period of time on the same target again and again. Automation will help you in that, but automation can never replace manual testing. This is what I believe strongly, and I don't know if somebody can change my mind on that. But please don't run behind automation always. Like, automation really is a part of process, but it doesn't always help. And to automate, just think of, let's say you are using 10 commands on your bash terminal when you are using Kali Linux, or maybe on a Windows command line. Why not just write those 10 commands into a simple bash scripts and just run them on a loop? That's it. That's a simplest way of automating the task. This is how the project Beam is written. This is nothing, it's not a big piece of code. It's simply a set of various for loops using the existing commands that I use repetitively, and that's how it's built. Okay, this is not more of pseudoscience behind that. So I hope that explains out your question, but I would again suggest that from my own experience, that automation helps, but it cannot replace the manual testing at all. Now let me just quickly move to the next one. Okay, so this is the most interesting part, I guess, according to me, for this particular talk, are the trending vulnerabilities. Okay, so when we talk about OWASP top 10 or any kind, like sense, sorry, not sense, the I just forgot the name over top of my head. I'm sorry for that. The top 25 vulnerabilities by, I guess, sense only or something. I just forgot it. Okay, so let's talk about OWASP top 10. Okay, so OWASP top 10 is a classification again. It doesn't give you an idea that there exists some other vulnerabilities as well, because you have to go and explore it. Now, these are the trending vulnerabilities these days, because these are the trending technologies which are being implemented everywhere. You will see them a lot, like anything. Okay, so GraphQL is something which makes your life hard as a sorry, just a second. Yep, I'm sorry. So GraphQL is something which makes your life harder as a pen tester, because in the APIs you have like a lot of different endpoints for different tasks. In GraphQL you have a single endpoint for performing various tasks. So a lot of times the vulnerabilities are eliminated themselves. There are a lot of headers being used. There are a lot of UUIDs being used. So GraphQL has a lot of attacks still. Like GraphQL has a mutation attack. GraphQL has like introspection query attacks. It has a IDOR. It has SQL injection. It has denial of service. But you have to go and find for it. Okay. But a lot of people, a lot of beginners are afraid of when they are doing GraphQL based pen tests. It's not a pseudoscience, but you have to understand how to form GraphQL queries. And there are a lot of website, and even the GraphQL docs are enough themselves to understand the GraphQL and how to form the queries and how to move forward. The another thing is a WebSockets, which is in coming days you will see WebSocket almost everywhere, like almost in all the rich applications. When I say rich application like WhatsApp, application like Facebook, where you're doing a two-way communication, right? It's not just the single way communication that first Harsh will send the message and then you will send a message. It's not. We both can do things simultaneously. Like, this is where the WebSockets come into picture. A lot of applications like even WhatsApp are using WebSockets, and WebSockets comes up with a lot of vulnerabilities. I'll show you what they are. I'll show you where the notes are around those vulnerabilities, but there are. Then there are things like SSO, single sign-on, which use Open Authentication 2.0 or SAML specifications. These are again vulnerable. These are like giving a simple example. Let's say I want to log into a particular application, and there are various options like login via Twitter, login via Facebook, login via Google, or login via XYZ. Okay, so these are the implementation of single sign-on, that using one sign up or using one application, you can sign into the different applications, right? So some uses SAML for that purpose, some uses open authentication for that purpose. More or less, they both are vulnerable if they are not properly implemented. So at the end of the day, these new technologies are only vulnerable if they are not implemented properly, or if there is some new research coming around them. Okay, then there is NoSQL injection. These are the NoSQL databases like MongoDB. So whenever you see an application on React or Angular or Electron, most of the time they are using the complete this mean or MERN stack, and they use the MongoDB as the database service. Okay, now MongoDB won't accept your typical SQL injection payload, right? So you have to first understand that what is the technology stack that you are dealing with. If it's MongoDB, focus upon finding NoSQL injection as well. There are plenty of payloads, not as much as for the MySQL one, but there are plenty of payload, and there is also NoSQL map. Just like the SQL map, there is also a NoSQL map if a lot of people are not aware of it. Now, then comes cache-based vulnerabilities. Some people call it cache. I just call it cache. So never mind. So cache-based vulnerabilities are more of like you are using an application that is using a lot of static resource like an image or a static page like .html page or something like that. So in current world, we all want speedy internet. We all want the internet to load faster. And how it load faster is it stores the static resources in like copy in an intermediate caching server. And if that caching server is not properly configured, it can cause like denial of service, it can cause web cache poisoning attacks, it can cause web cache deception attacks as well. Then JWT. I'll come on the bypasses. Then JWT. So JWT, JSON Web Token, which has like already taken away sleep for a lot of researchers and a lot of bug bounty hunters, because a lot of time when you see JWT tokens, CSRF might not be possible. A lot of time when you see JWT token, authentication and authorization check cannot be bypassed. Might be possible, but why not just look at the vulnerabilities in JWT itself? There are a lot of vulnerabilities in JWT, like non-algorithm attack, like the KID or KID injection, or the, the what we say it, I just forgot the name, the signature stripping attacks, or maybe the signature confusion attacks. So there are a lot of kind of attacks in JWT as well. There is big list of JWT based attacks, so you can always go and try for those attacks. Also, in the JWT based authentication, there are possibilities of performing attacks like CSRF and other things. Just simply try to remove the JWT token and see that if it still accepts the request or not. So there are a lot of ways to bypass things. You have to go and try it. It's not always like that you saw a JWT token and you are like, okay, the application won't be vulnerable to X attack or Y attack. It never happens like that. Now, everything which is fixed is now totally dependent upon the bypasses. Okay, let's say I found a cross-site scripting and it was fixed by the client, but what if someday you come with some new payload and some new bypass and you try to bypass it and the access is executed, right? So always make sure whenever you're giving a remediation to a client or anybody, it's always defense in depth. Okay, it's not just the solution, it should be defense in depth, that this is the point where the excesses will be eliminated completely. This is the point where access won't be possible as per the given current research scenarios. Okay, so this is where the bypasses come into picture. Every single vulnerability that you encountered in your life can be bypassed. Even the access control implementation can be bypassed. But obviously there are scenarios where it cannot be, but just let's assume for our good that it can be bypassed. Okay, so these are the trending vulnerabilities apart from the OWASP top 10, or you can say with insights as our topic suggests to the OWASP top 10. So this gives you a quick overview of what all things may exist, and these are the things which you should start focusing on, because this is the potential and these are the potential vulnerabilities that you will encounter in the future, next coming 4 or 5 years. Now, approaching trending vulnerabilities in my way is actually not a big deal. I'll just quickly share my screen, just a second. Let's quickly show you that. Okay, so yeah, this is the Learn History 5 repository that I have created, where I go about learning things daily. This is right now, I'm not sure how many days are updated. It's not updated from last 10 or 20 days. It's okay, I'll update it shortly. Now, there you will find a lot of new attacks, there you will find a lot of new things. This is not my research, okay? This is some of things are my research and my work, but this is more of like how I learn something new daily, how I am like aware of like new technologies like server side template injection, exploiting GraphQL, things like that. Now if you go and simply say control F and search for GraphQL, there should be like around different things. So I started GraphQL series on the 20th, 21st and 22nd day, and these covers a lot of GraphQL attacks. So if you want to see that how I basically approach and how I keep things, so there are like various attacks. So these are the introspection queries, what they are, what are some attacks in GraphQL. So these are the various attacks in GraphQL that exist. Let me little bit zoom in. So these are the various attacks that may exist in the GraphQL, and these are the various references. So if you go to day 21, it's part 2. It talks about how can you check about denial of service, how you can check about the information disclosure via error messages, and what are the various good burp extension like InQL and GraphQL Raider and things like that. Now there are more GraphQL resources like offensive GraphQL API pen testing. This is a talk. So this is how you learn things, and this is how you kind of learn new things. So Chrome extensions code review. These are again a part of application security itself, but these are not involved into bug bounty that much directly. So if you wish to be a pen tester, in coming days, or if you really wish to be pen tester, this is something you should focus on, not just focusing upon what is included in bug bounty, but how you can give your client the best best consultancy or a best remediation plan, or just show them, okay, you are this much vulnerable, now it's up to you what you want to do, right? So in this particular repository, you will find a lot of new attacks like oversized XML attacks and a lot of things you might not have heard of, because there were a lot of things which even I was not aware of that they exist. Okay, so this AWS SRF meta leakage, there is a blog on it. So you just simply go to this resource, click on it, and this guy really wrote a nice blog, and this talks about that how he done simply HTML injection to just let me show you. So this one is the payload that I was talking about, simply performing iframe SRC and giving your AWS Meta IP. This is common. This is of AWS itself. So it would not be different for you, different for me. It's always same. Okay. And then he was able to see the AWS metadata. Now people say, what is the use of this? This is basically can also give you the AWS secrets and keys. And once you have AWS secrets and keys, you know that what to do next. You can simply go and access the organization's servers completely, right? So this is more about it, that how you can approach things from my way, that how you can keep on learning and implementing those things in your bug bounty thing, or your just keep notes of whatever you find interesting and start exploring them. Let's say whenever I find that there is a new GraphQL attack, I just quickly recall that, okay, what application I tested using GraphQL, and I just go to those applications, whether it's a pen testing or a bug bounty or whatever it is, and I start to see if it's vulnerable. Even if it's a pen testing, I ping my client that, hey, there's a new attack came into picture, and this is what I found, and we want it to be reported again. I'm not gonna charge you extra, or my company is not gonna charge you extra. It's just like a good faith thing. Okay, so yeah, this is how that you can go about learning my way. And again, back to PPT. Tips and tricks, I have, I guess, shared enough tips and tricks, and the only one tip and trick that I guess I should share is that don't stop where you are stuck. Okay, this is when you are stuck at something, it means that you have to explore, and you have to come back, and you have to exploit it. Simply keep on learning. Like I'll say again and again, that keep on learning and keep on thinking of the ideas that how you can increase the impact. Even if you found a server version disclosure in a bug bounty program, I know that you cannot report it, it's a P5 issue, but use that, you know more of like the server version to further exploit, further see that how you can do it. Maybe that server, maybe that Jira version is vulnerable to a particular CV, and nobody might have exploited it. Let's say the CV is not having a public exploit, but see from the description, can you write a public exploit for it? Is it possible for you to form a payload for it? So just don't stop like where you stuck. So let me just quickly jump back to the questions. Okay. So are the APIs keys sensitive information? Yes, they are, but depends what API keys are. There is a repository called Key Hacks, and there's a tool called Advanced Key Hacks. So this will help you out to figure out if they are actually useful or not. But in sometimes if you see that X API key, or there's a, let's say, test API key, or let's say some organization API key. So go to that some organization's website and see that how their API key works. Can you utilize it? Is it intentional to keep that API key in the client side? Sometimes it is, sometimes it is not. So, and yeah, this is how you can approach it. Okay, so I guess, yep, enough tries for the social engineering, but you know, yeah. So okay, so you can obviously, yeah, AWS IP is same for all. This is the most of the common IP address for AWS services. For the meta URL, it's same. It is different for GCP, it is different for Azure, it is different for a different kind of cloud providers. For AWS, it's always same, the 169 or something or something. So yeah. So yeah, with this, you can obviously get in touch with me on the Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. This is where I'll upload the slide deck on the speaker deck, and you can also email me. I'm most active on Twitter these days. So yep. And if there is any slight delay in responding, please spare me for that. And once again, thank you. If you have guys any question, I'll be there for next couple of minutes, and we can obviously have a discussion on it. And I hope you were not bored at all, because I end up boring people at the end. So yeah.
So thank you so much, sir. I would really like to thank her, sir, a lot. That was a really enlightening speech and was to take a lot away a plethora of really useful and important information. Now we will be moving on to the question and answer round, where we'll be entertaining the questions that you put up in the chat box. So starting question is, after all that sir have answered, the left questions are, how we can trigger the blind SQL injection by manual implementation?
Okay. So let's say, see, when we talk about blind SQL injection, first of all, we have to figure out that is it an out of band SQL injection, or we are talking about more of like a time-based SQL injection, or more of like that, right? So let's say it's a totally out of band SQL injection. First of all, that you will try. There are some functions in SQL, SQL languages like MySQL, where you can use the external services like work collaborator and all. Like you can provide a URL and try to see if interaction happens, right? Once the interaction starts to happen, then you go about exploiting it further. So blind SQL injections are not that much direct if it's an out of band, but it's just simply a blind SQL injection where you can run true false queries. Let's say one equals to true, then your page will be showing data. You say one equals to two, which is a false condition, your page is not showing data. These are the example of blind SQL injection. So this is more of like you hit and you try to exploit the databases, right? So if it's simple, if it's not that much complicated, your map will help you for sure in exploiting it further. But in some cases, if there are like cookie implementation, CSRF implementation, you can obviously there are various headers option available in SQL map to use the cookies and CSRF token with that as well. So I guess you can do that way.
Okay, thank you. I hope it covers all the aspects of the question that someone has a doubt about. Moving on
Your
to the
voice is
next
breaking.
question is,
I am not able to hear it.
hello?
Your
Am I
your internet
audible?
connection is breaking. No, your voice is breaking. Maybe somebody can else can put it up, or I'm not sure, because your voice is breaking out.
Just a
Might
second.
be connection issue.
Just a second.
Yeah, sure, no worries.
Sir, till this internet connection get right.
Sure.
So there was another question. You being a member at Synec Red Team, so people want to know how to get into the Synec Red Team.
So to be honest, when I applied, there were like a simple step for like straightforward process where you just simply apply to them and they select your resume and then you move for the assessment. But these days, I guess things have been changed a bit. These days, you have to go through some. I guess there are some quick options like solve the hack the box machines, X machines, and Y machines. I'm really not sure about the new process because obviously. It's been almost an year for me, more than a year for me to be in the Synac Red team. But I guess they now allow you through this Synac hack the box track where you can go and fast track your application, and then further there are some exams and stuff like that. So yeah, and there are some of the, you can say, brand ambassador kind of thing. There are some people assigned from India like Nikhil Srivastava, Pratik Dabi, and all like that. So their referral might also be useful because they are envoys. Yeah, Synac call them envoys. So this might also be useful. So do we have any other questions, Yash?
Yes, sir. So the question was how to build a methodology for approaching a bug bounty program that has a wide scope.
Okay, so when you say wide scope, I would say that refer to my one of the talk around scope-based reconnaissance. So scope-based reconnaissance allows you to divide the scope into three parts. Like one is small scope where you have only one or two or three URLs. There is a medium scope where you have the star.something.com, star.company.com, and there is a large scope where you have like every single thing related to that target in scope, right? So I have created a complete mind map. A blog is there on Cobalt's blog. There is a mind map on it. So go and search scope-based reconnaissance by Harsh, and you will like get a lot of resources around it. I have like given around 4 or 5 talks on this methodology in the past. So there is a talk on approaching like methodology on application security and reconnaissance. There are separate talk on reconnaissance. There's a blog. So I guess that will contain a more detailed answer of this question. So yeah, you can go and follow that thing.
Okay, sir. Hope sir has answered your question. So, like other question was, people want to know something more about Project Beam.
Okay, so Project Beam is nothing very fancy. It's just a collection of various scripts. So let's say there are n number of like I use Nuclei, I use X tool, I use Y tool. So I use various command to run those tools, various flags and various kind of regex and all. So instead of running those tools again and again on the various targets, what I did is I basically combined them, collected them into a single interface. I collected them all into one. Then I and one of my friend Kathan, we like sat together and we now converted into scope based reconnaissance. Okay, now let's say I have a target for scope, small scope. I can just run only 3 4 tools which are relevant. And now let's say I have a very large scope and I have to run all the tools. I can run accordingly. And now what I basically do is I take a list of let's say 100 targets. I put it on VPS on a for loop. It just tools do everything like in 4 or 5 days. All the 100 targets are scanned. All the results are properly sorted out. And in those 5 10 days I go and perform my actions manually, like I do my manual hacking or things like that. Let's say on Monday I start running the scans, and till Friday night I have all the scans because office time is, should not be at least compromised. So this is how you this is where the automation only helps, right? Apart from that, everything is manual. I believe like you have to work on things manually.
Okay, sir. So now I would like to call upon Varnika for the vote of thanks.
So, with the end of our audience queries, we would like to wind up our session. On behalf of Team Cyversity, I would like to extend our vote of thanks to our honorable guest, Mr. Harsh. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us your valuable time out of your busy schedule and sharing your experience. We would be glad as a community to honor you with a memento. Please, please us by accepting this small effort by our community.
Once again, I would like to thank you all. Like, thank you for the, all the things. And Smart has done a lot of chatting with me regarding fixing up the time for session. So yeah, once again, a big thanks to him as well for taking up all the pain. And yeah, I hope that people were bored very productively and it was useful. So looking forward for the next sessions or next time we interact.
Thank you so much, sir. I would also like to thank Team Cyversity and audience for being in constant support. Thank you, everyone. We will meet again with another episode of Enlightening Talk series. Till then, stay tuned.
Thank you and have a nice day, everyone.